Okay, let's talk about this explosive story that's coming out about January 6th, how the FBI lost count of how many paid informants were at the Capitol on January 6th, and later performed an audit to figure out the exact number. They don't know how many informants they had at January 6th. This is crazy. So let's just get into this article from New York Post. The FBI had so many paid informants at the Capitol on January 6th that it lost track of the number and had to perform a later audit to examine exactly how many confidential human sources run by the different FBI field officers were present that day. A former assistant director of the Bureau has told lawmakers. Wow. At least one informant was communicating with his FBI handler as he entered the Capitol, according to Stephen D'Antonio, formerly in charge of the Bureau's Washington field office. D'Antonio, I think I'm saying his name right now, has testified behind closed doors to the House Judiciary Committee that his office was aware before the riot that some of their informants would attend the Stop the Steal rally thrown by former President Donald Trump. That makes sense. FBI is going to have informants if you feel that you have people about to do some bad stuff. I'd rather them have people in there. But he only learned after the fact that informants run by other field officers were also present, along with others who had participated of their own accord. So for clarity, the FBI was not only running informants who were at January 6th or, on their behalf, but also some of their own informants were there by themselves. They had just went there to do whatever they're going to do. The Washington field office had to ask FBI headquarters to do a poll or put out something to people saying where any CHS involved. CHS is confidential human sources. So they could get a handle on the scale of the FBI spying operations at the Capitol that day. We started getting responses back from FBI headquarters, said D'Antonio, which helped identify which field officers had planted confidential informants in the crowd. One paid informant from the Kansas field office, wow, they had informants from Kansas, was at the Capitol as the crowd surged inside and allegedly was in communication with his FBI handler. While they were in the crowd, I think saying that they were going in, according to former Bureau brass. Now, asked how many informants the audit discovered were in the crowd that day, D'Antonio would only say a handful. FBI spends an average of $42 million each year on payments to its confidential human sources, according to the Department of Justice Inspector General, which has raised concerns about the vetting process of these paid informants. Now, having paid informants is not anything new. When I was at the DA's office in the Bronx, the NYPD would bring us paid informants all the time, and we get search warrants based on the things they found. So having paid informants is a necessary evil of law enforcement. In a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray on Tuesday, Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan described D'Antonio's testimony as extremely concerning. It suggests that the FBI cannot adequately track the activities and operations of its informants, and that it lost control of its CHSs, confidential human sources, present at the Capitol on January 6th, he wrote. These revelations reinforce existing concerns identified by Special Counsel John Durham about the FBI's use of and payment to CHSs who have fabricated evidence and misrepresented information. The Justice Department's Inspector General also identified critical problems in the FBI CHS program, Jordan added, including the FBI's failure to fully vet CHSs and the FBI's willingness to ignore red flags that will call into question an informant's reliability. Now, that makes sense because if you're paying someone to get criminal information on other people, there may be a tendency for them to kind of, I don't want to say make stuff up, but push things that don't really need to be pushed because, again, they know their paycheck depends on them getting some type of dirt on these people. So it's a concern that I think is legitimate. Jordan has asked Wray to provide a substantive briefing on how the FBI used paid informants on January 6, 2021, and any specific guidelines or admonishments that were provided by the FBI CHS prior to deploying. Wray has also been asked to provide all briefing documents received from Capitol riot informants. Jordan also wants source reporting, documentation related to former British spy Christopher Steele, who was responsible for the now notorious dossier of false allegations about President Trump-Russia hoax. Yes, the Trump-Russia hoax, the Democrats' January 6th. The number of FBI informants present during the Capitol riots has long been a controversial topic at trials of the hundreds of defendants apprehended since that day, which I understand, right? If you're like, hey, there were all these informants that were telling us to go in, then that makes sense. Defense lawyers at the trial of 5 Proud Boys recently asserted that the FBI had as many as 8 informants spying on the organization and that at least one was with them at the Capitol that day. So they had one of the snitches with them. Former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Studd has said that in addition to the paid informants, the FBI had at least 18 undercover agents in the crowd, plus an estimated 20 from the Department of Homeland Security. So that's a lot of agents. So wow. All right, you know what? Before I get out of here, I want to leave you guys with this. I've always said that January 6th was a failure in security and not an insurrection. I took a lot of flack for that. But I want you to watch this video. We're going to compare the security at January 6th to the security at a BLM rally 6 months later. And you'll see the stark differences, because when it comes to January 6th, security was almost non-existent. But when it came to a BLM rally, they had security out the wazoo.
They tried to shut the doors, and I've reported on tons and tons and tons of protests all over the country and even outside the country, and I've never seen police so restrained. And if you ask me, that's what the story is here today. The police did not intervene. They were unprepared. Someone has to be held accountable. But, you know, people were going in, going out, taking things, rummaging through things, breaking things at their own will. And the police, for the most part, stood by and watched.
And this protest didn't come as a surprise. It had been long talked about. It was much planned. All week we've been hearing about protesters planning to descend on the Capitol. So how were the police so unprepared as you saw it?
That's right. One would think that they had the most sophisticated counterterrorism measures in play. People use, ISIS tweets, and what they say on social media networks is intel. But here we have Trump supporters making their plans to have a hostile takeover of the Capitol building public. They were very, very transparent about what they were planning. They were calling it the Second American Revolution. Yet the police were so ill prepared. They weren't even dressed in riot gear when the thousands of Trump supporters first descended on the Capitol building campus. It's astonishing. It really blows my mind. I've covered Black Lives Matter protests here this summer, and police were already in riot gear, in some cases outnumbering the protesters. This was night and day, and I could only have my own suspicions as to why that was the case, but for the sake of trying to stay objective, I'll keep it to myself.
So in one instance, January 6th, they had 5 officers for 30,000 people. Here, they have officers from different departments. They got officers with riot gear. Everybody's prepared. The other one, no riot gear, no nothing. This is why January 6th occurred. It wasn't because I believe it was some pre-planned event. I think it was because security was so bad and it gave a large crowd that was unruly an opportunity to riot. Simple enough. But tell me where I'm wrong in the comments section. Tell me why you hate me. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you next time. Peace.